A millionaire musician challenged a poor 8-year-old girl to a trumpet duel in front of 1,000 people. What he didn't know was that this battle would shatter his entire world and reveal a devastating secret connecting their families. But before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you what happened that night at the Grand Theatre when Cole Harrison made the biggest mistake of his life. The Grand Theatre's crystal chandelier bathed the Nashville audience in golden light. That Friday night, Emma Brooks sat squeezed between two women in the last row, their perfume thick enough to taste, her fingers wrapped around a trumpet. If the dented green-stained thing could still be called that, brass valves stuck when she pressed them, dents mapped the instrument's body like scars. But to Emma, 8 years old with braids tied unevenly by her own hands, this trumpet was the only piece of her father that remained. Thomas Brooks had been a construction worker, calloused hands, bent back from carrying steel beams, but a soul that floated when he played on street corners. "One day, baby girl," he'd say, kissing her forehead, "you'll play on the big stages, and I'll be there, even if it's just in spirit." 6 months ago, a poorly secured beam had stolen Thomas from life. Emma had buried her father and inherited his dream along with his battered trumpet. She was here because a local radio station had run a contest, one child selected to perform before Cole Harrison's show. Emma, who'd never had a formal music lesson, had submitted a trembling recording made on a neighbor's phone. She'd been chosen. Nobody was more surprised than Emma herself. On stage, Cole Harrison adjusted his Italian silk tie in the VIP box. 32 years old, 5 Grammys, sold-out tours. His gold-plated trumpet rested in a red velvet case, polished until it gleamed like jewelry. These charity promotions were contractual obligations, necessary evils to maintain his man-of-the-people image. He expected a well-trained child from a wealthy family, ready to play something technically flawless and exit quickly. When Emma climbed onto the stage, tripping over her too-long cotton dress, the murmur in the audience was immediate. "My God, look at her trumpet. Is this a joke? Poor child." Cole stood from his seat in the box, leaning against the railing with a smile sharp as a blade. This would be entertaining. Emma reached center stage, the spotlight so intense she had to squint. Her hands shook. The trumpet felt heavy as lead. That's when Cole decided to descend. His footsteps echoed through the silent theater as he walked to the stage with the elegance of someone who knew he was being watched. The audience erupted in applause. He waved, charming, then stopped beside Emma, looking down at her with one raised eyebrow. "That's your trumpet?" he asked, pointing at the instrument as if it were a museum piece. Emma nodded, mute with nerves. "Do you really know how to play?" Cole continued, his voice amplified by his lapel mic. The audience laughed, an uncertain sound, unsure if this was part of the show or cruelty. I try, sir," Emma murmured. Cole grabbed his own trumpet, gleaming perfect, expensive, and raised it for all to see. "How about a duel, little one? You and me, here, now. If you win, I'll pay for all your studies at the best music school in the country. But if I win—" He paused dramatically. "You promise never to step on a stage again. Some dreams," he smiled coldly, "simply aren't for everyone." The theater fell into absolute silence. Emma felt tears burn her eyes. But she thought of her father, of his rough hands adjusting her small hands on the valves, of his hoarse voice saying, "Music doesn't live in the instrument, baby girl. It lives here." And he'd touch her chest, right over her heart. "I accept," she said, her voice so low the microphone barely caught it. Cole smiled victoriously. "Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. You're about to see the difference between talent and illusion." From the audience, Eleanor Price, 70 years old, former principal trumpet of the Boston Philharmonic, white hair and penetrating blue eyes, stood up. With a firm voice, she announced, "She accepts, and I will teach her." Cole paled. Eleanor was a legend. Cole was the first to play. He chose a piece he'd mastered since age 15, Napoli by Hermann Bellstedt, a virtuosic variation requiring absolute control. Agility and breath. His notes were crystalline, perfect, each musical phrase executed with surgical precision. It was pure technique, clean, impeccable. The audience applauded enthusiastically, but there were no tears. There was admiration, yes, but it was the cold admiration reserved for well-adjusted machines. Cole took an exaggerated bow and handed the stage to Emma. The girl wiped her sweaty palms on her dress and brought the trumpet to her chapped lips. She closed her eyes and began to play. The first note came out trembling, the second out of tune. But on the third, something happened. Emma stopped thinking about the theatre, the people, Cole. She thought of her father. She thought of the last time she saw him before he left for work. He'd played a simple melody, a lullaby he'd invented for her when she was a baby. "If you ever feel afraid," he'd said, "play our song." I'll hear it, and that was the song Emma played. There was no technique, there was truth. The notes came out imperfect, but loaded with something Cole's technique could never reach. Soul. Each musical phrase was a memory. Her father coming home tired from work, but still finding energy to play. Her mother smiling while cooking and listening. Winter nights when music was the only warmth they had. The audience, which had expected to laugh, fell silent. A woman in the third row began to cry. A man in the gallery closed his eyes, remembering his own mother. When Emma finished, there was a second of absolute silence. That kind of silence that only happens when something true touches the heart. And then, like a wave, applause exploded. It wasn't polite, it was emotional. People were standing, handkerchiefs pressed against eyes, throats tight. Emma opened her eyes. Confused, Cole stood, paralyzed. For the first time in years, he felt something that terrified him. Inadequacy, because on that stage, with a trumpet worth less than his shoes, that girl had done what he never could. She had touched hearts. Humiliation burned in his chest like acid. Before the improvised jury could declare a winner, Cole grabbed the microphone. "That was moving," he said, his voice controlled. "But music isn't just emotion. It's technique. It's precision. I propose something, a rematch. 1 week from now, right here, I choose the piece." Emma blinked, lost. "And if you don't accept," Cole continued, venomous smile in place, "everyone will know you're afraid of fair competition." That's when an elderly voice echoed from the audience. "She accepts, and I'll teach her." All heads turned. Eleanor Price, back straight despite her 70-plus years, stood from the fifth row. She wore a purple wool shawl, and her blue eyes shone with determination. Cole went pale. Eleanor had been a legend, and now she walked to the stage with the authority of someone who never needed to prove anything to anyone. "Cole Harrison," she said, climbing the steps slowly, "you've always been technically brilliant, but music without heart is organized noise." She extended her hand to Emma. "Come, child, let's work." Emma, not fully understanding what was happening, took Eleanor's hand, and in that moment Cole realized he'd underestimated not just the girl, but the power of those who still believed music was more than notes. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through Eleanor's third-floor apartment windows. The place smelled of old coffee, candle wax and yellowed paper, walls covered in black and white photographs. Eleanor Young in grand theatres, beside famous conductors. 3 trumpets hung on the wall like works of art, an entire bookshelf of time-stained sheet music. Eleanor sat Emma on the upright piano bench and announced, "Cole will choose Carnival of Venice, the most difficult piece in the classical trumpet repertoire, variations that break professionals, impossible octave jumps, endurance that few possess." Emma felt her stomach sink. Eleanor continued, "Difficult isn't impossible. Your father taught you to play with heart. I'll teach you to play with mind. Together, you'll be complete." Brutal training began. Eleanor was merciless. Again, faster, breathe here, not there, don't think, feel, now don't feel, think. Emma rehearsed 8 hours a day. On the second day, her lips cracked and bled. She cried from pain and frustration. Eleanor cleaned the blood with gauze soaked in chamomile and said, "Pain is the price of greatness, but you're not seeking greatness, you're seeking truth. So the pain is worth more. Flashbacks intersperse the training. Emma at 5, sitting on her father's lap while he played on working-class neighborhood corners. Thomas, 39, hands calloused from carrying beams, back bent, but with a wide smile. Music doesn't choose who's born rich or poor. Baby girl, it chooses who has the courage to listen to their own heart. Another flashback, Thomas teaching Emma to hold the trumpet. See these valves, they're like life's decisions. You choose which one to press. And the sound changes, always choose with love. Meanwhile, Cole rehearsed alone in his glass and marble mansion in the hills. The rehearsal room was lined with mahogany, perfect acoustic isolation. Adjustable lighting. He played Carnival of Venice 40 times in one day. Each execution technically perfect, but at night when he stopped, the mansion echoed a terrifying silence. He tried to play Emma's lullaby but couldn't make it sound emotional. Frustrated, he called Marcus and ordered, "Make sure the judges are on our side. Adjust the sound system to favor high frequencies. I cannot lose to a child." Marcus, uncomfortable but obedient, made the calls. But there was something in his face. A pang of conscience he ignored. Denise visited Emma every night after her triple shift. She brought homemade calendula ointment for her daughter's injured lips, prepared chicken soup, and sang softly while Emma fell asleep exhausted. Mrs. Kowalski, Eleanor's polished neighbor, 82 years old, white hair in a bun, perpetual floral apron, brought steaming pierogi and sat to listen to Emma play. Through tears, she told how music saved her family in a concentration camp during World War II. "My father played violin in hiding. It kept us human." Lily Zhang, Emma's best friend, 9 years old, daughter of Chinese immigrants who owned a restaurant, appeared with sesame dumplings made by her mother and drawings of encouragement. Ivy Chen published an article, "Musical Duel Goes Viral. Who is Cole Harrison really?" She was beginning to discover inconsistencies in his official biography. Emma wanted to give up on the second night when she couldn't master a complex trill. Eleanor told her that she herself had almost quit at 19 after a critic destroyed her debut. Cole argued with Marcus about going too far with manipulations, but ultimately agreed. Emma dreamed of her father, but upon waking couldn't remember his face clearly, only his hoarse voice. Denise argued with her boss at the supermarket to leave early and watch her daughter train. Almost losing her job, the smell of old coffee permeated the cramped apartment, the relentless sound of the metronome marking time, the taste of blood mixed with metal from the trumpet's mouthpiece, the rough texture of gauze on lip wounds, the amber light from an antique lamp creating long shadows, the cold, empty echo of Cole's mansion, the warmth of soup brought by Denise, the softness of polished pierogi, the weight of exhaustion on Emma's shoulders, the palpable loneliness of Cole, surrounded by luxury. Tuesday, third day of training. Eleanor stopped in the middle of a musical phrase and frowned. Wait, that variation you just played isn't in the Carnival of Venice score. Where did you get that?" Emma, confused, replied, "My father taught me. He always played it like that." Eleanor grabbed the original score. Compared, the variation was completely different. More complex, more emotive, with ornaments that seemed like jazz improvisation mixed with classical. "Who did your father learn this from?" Eleanor insisted. Emma closed her eyes, trying to remember. He always talked about a man who taught him to play when he was a child, called him the Trumpet Angel. Said this man played on Memphis streets and gave free lessons to any child who wanted to learn. Eleanor wrote everything down. Something in this story resonated with familiarity that night. Eleanor searched through old music magazine archives. She found a 1983 article from the Memphis Appeal, grainy photo of a black man, trumpet in hand, surrounded by children on Beale Street, caption, "Samuel Harrison, Memphis's trumpet angel, teaches classical music free to community youth." Eleanor's heart stopped. Samuel Harrison. Cole's last name. She confronted Emma. "The man who taught your father. Did he have a name?" Emma thought. "Dad just called him Samuel, said he played more beautifully than angels. But life wasn't fair to him. Eleanor showed the photo. Emma's eyes widened. That's him. Dad had this photo, kept it in his wallet. Meanwhile, Ruth Harrison tried for the third time to contact Cole. She went to the mansion, but the security guard wouldn't let her in. Marcus watched through cameras and warned Cole, "Your aunt is here again." Cole, tense, ordered, "Don't let her in, and don't bother me with this." Ruth, hurt but determined, left a yellowed envelope with the guard. "Give this to him. They're photos of his father, my brother Samuel. Maybe he'll remember he once had family." Alone at night, Cole opened the envelope. Inside, 5 black and white photos. Young Samuel Harrison playing on Memphis streets. In one, beside Samuel, a black boy about 12 held an old trumpet, something written on the back. "Thomas Brooks, my best student, 1987. Cole felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Thomas Brooks. Emma's father, he remembered in a vivid flashback. He was 12. Father took him to a musical competition in Memphis. He won, earned a scholarship the next day, ashamed of his father who played on streets for tips. And Cole said, "You embarrass me. Never appear near me in public again." Samuel looked at him with hurt eyes but nodded. "Okay, son. One day you'll understand." Cole never spoke to his father again. 5 years later, Samuel died. Alone, calling his son's name, Cole dropped his whiskey glass. Liquid spread across the marble floor as he held the photo of young Thomas beside Samuel. "He taught her father," Cole murmured, voice broken. "My father taught her father, and now she plays like he played." Guilt was an avalanche. Lily visited Emma with sesame dumplings and a drawing. 2 girls playing instruments under a rainbow. "You'll win," Lily said with childlike conviction, "because you play with love." Eleanor received a call from Helena Strauss, a former Philharmonic colleague, who asked with disdain, "Have you gone mad?" "Eleanor, training a penniless girl with no future," Eleanor responded firmly. "Future isn't defined by money, Helena. It's defined by character," and hung up. Marcus discovered Ruth was trying to contact and warned Cole to avoid family scandals. Cole agreed, but guilt consumed him. Ivy published a second article, "Cole Harrison and the Forgotten Father, the Story Nobody Tells." She discovered Samuel died alone in a public nursing home, rain beating against the apartment window creating hypnotic rhythm. Amber light from antique lamp projecting elongated shadows, smell of old paper from archive magazines, tremor in Cole's hands, holding faded photos, bitter taste of spilled whiskey, sound of muffled sobbing, rough texture of old photo, weight of guilt in Cole's chest, warmth of Eleanor's embrace, coldness of mansion's marble floor. Friday night of the rematch arrived. The Grand Theatre was more packed than the week before. The story had gone viral on social media. National TV journalists, bloggers, photographers filled the corridors. The atmosphere was like a sporting event. Who would win? The arrogant millionaire or the inspiring poor girl? Cole arrived in a black limousine. Impeccable, in a black Italian designer suit, hair perfectly styled, expression controlled, but eyes revealing insomnia. Emma arrived by bus with Eleanor and Denise, wearing the same wash dress. But this time, Denise had lovingly combed her hair. Making firm, clean braids backstage, Emma warmed her lips with gentle scales. The wounds had healed, but the skin was sensitive. Cole passed by her, stopped, looked at the dented trumpet. "It's not too late to quit," he said, voice low and tense. "I won't have pity on you out there." Emma stared at him, and for the first time, Cole saw something unexpected. Unwavering determination. "My father said broken things make the most beautiful music," she replied. Voice firm, because truth lives in them. Cole felt a chill down his spine. On stage, the presenter explained, each would play complete Carnival of Venice. 3 musical judges would decide, but 2 of them owed Cole favors. The third, Professor Andrei Volkov, Russian, 65, implacable critic, was incorruptible. Cole played first. It was an execution that would go into the books, each variation technically perfect. each note in exact mathematical place, each breath calculated with surgical precision, impressive speed in fast passages, absolute control in long notes. When he finished, the audience erupted in deafening applause. It was admiration, technical respect, but there were no tears. It was like applauding a well-adjusted machine. Emma went on stage, her hands trembled lifting the trumpet. The spotlights were too hot. Sweat ran down her forehead. She looked at Eleanor in the fifth row. The old teacher made a simple gesture, hand on heart. Emma took a deep breath and began. The first variations came out tense. Nervous in the second variation, she missed two notes. Her heart almost stopped in the audience. Some murmured. Cole smiled, victorious. Marcus backstage, already prepared press release of the victory. But then Emma closed her eyes. She did what Eleanor taught, stopped trying to be perfect, and started being true. The following variations changed. Not technically flawless, but with visceral human soul. She played not to impress, but to tell a story about a father who loved music more than money, about teaching love through notes, about legacies that transcend death. The audience began to silence. The air grew dense, and that's when it happened. In the middle of the audience, fifth row, Ruth Harrison stood up. Tears flowed freely down her face. She shouted, voice choked but loud, "My God, it's him! It's Samuel!" People turned to her. Confused, Ruth began walking down the aisle toward the stage. Emma, disconcerted but still playing, opened her eyes. "That melody!" Ruth shouted, pointing at Emma. "That variation she's doing now isn't in the original Carnival of Venice score. It's the variation my brother Samuel Harrison created in the 80s. He played on Memphis streets, teaching children for free." A murmur swept through the theater like an electric wave. Emma stopped playing, heart racing. Ruth climbed onto the stage. Nobody stopped her, all hypnotized by the drama. She knelt before the girl, held her shoulders. "Child, who taught you this music?" Emma, voice trembling, My father. What was his name?" "Thomas Brooks." Ruth covered her mouth with her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. She turned to the audience, voice loud and clear despite tears. "Thomas Brooks was my brother Samuel Harrison's apprentice, Cole Harrison's father." She pointed at Cole backstage. "In the 80s, Samuel lived on Memphis streets giving free lessons to poor children. Thomas was one of them. He was like a son to him. Samuel loved that boy." Cole, still hidden in the wings, felt the world spin. His legs weakened, Ruth continued, now looking directly where Cole hid. "My brother Samuel died 15 years ago, alone in a public nursing home, rejected by his own son, who he taught everything about music. Cole was ashamed of his father for being poor, for playing on streets. Samuel died calling the name of the son who never visited again, never answered his calls." The silence in the theater was absolute, heavy, suffocating. Ruth looked at Emma again, wiped tears from the girl's face. "This child carries the legacy you abandoned, Cole Harrison. Your father is alive in her, in the melody, in the heart, in the truth you lost." Emma, tears now flowing, looked at the trumpet in her hands. All the pieces fit together, the strange variations her father played. Stories of the trumpet angel, the way Thomas revered Samuel even decades later. "I learned from an angel," he always said. Now Emma understood, and the weight of responsibility fell on her child's shoulders. Cole came out from backstage, staggering, face white as paper. The audience turned to him, some with pity, many with silent judgment. He looked at Emma, at the dented trumpet carrying more history than his gold instrument, and something inside him broke irreparably. Cole walked to center stage like a sleepwalker. His legs trembled. The man who always carried himself like a king, who'd built a persona of unshakable confidence, crumbled there before 1,000 people. He fell to his knees. The dry sound of impact echoed through the silent theater. His shoulders began shaking with sobs he'd suppressed for an entire decade. "I was 12 years old," he began, voice torn and unrecognizable, "when my father took me to that musical competition in Memphis. I won, earned a scholarship to the Nashville Conservatory. A dream paused to breathe, choking, and the next day I told him I didn't want to be seen with him anymore, that he embarrassed me, that a man who played on streets for tips would never truly be my father. The audience was frozen, collectively holding their breath. He looked at me, Cole continued, tears flowing freely, with those eyes, those damn gentle eyes I now see in this girl, and you know what he said. His voice broke completely. He said, "That's okay, son, I understand, you'll go far. But when you play, remember music isn't about you, it's about who listens. It's about touching the soul of those who forgot they have one." I never understood. Until today. He looked at Emma, who stood paralyzed, holding the trumpet. "You play like he played, with truth, with this thing I spent 20 years trying to buy with perfect technique and expensive instruments. And you, at 8 years old with a trumpet worth less than my shoes, are everything I never managed to be." Ruth climbed onto the stage, hugged Cole. He buried his face in his aunt's shoulder and cried like an abandoned child. Sobs that seemed to tear his chest. Ruth stroked his hair, murmuring in his ear, "Samuel never stopped loving you until his last day," he said. "My son will come back. I know he will." Eleanor, from the audience, wiped her own tears with the back of her hand. This wasn't a competition victory. It was healing of an old wound. The panel of judges, uncomfortable and visibly emotional, tried to proceed with protocol. Warren Mitchell, the judge Cole had bribed, stood and declared, "I was paid to vote for Cole Harrison, but I can't. My conscience won't allow it." He turned to Cole. "You don't need my approval. You need a mirror." The other bribed judge lowered his head. Ashamed, Professor Volkov simply said, "There's no judgment here, there's only truth." Cole stood, wiped his face with the back of his hand, approached the microphone. "No need to judge. I lost, and I deserve to have lost." He approached Emma, knelt at her height. "I promised to pay for your studies if you won. I'll keep my word. Full scholarship to the best music school in the country. But I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be like my father should have been recognized in life." Emma finally spoke, voice small but surprisingly firm. "Your father was good. My dad talked about him all the time. Said without the trumpet angel he would have never learned anything. Said Samuel saved his life, gave him purpose when he had none." Cole closed his eyes, breathing ragged. Trumpet angel, that's what they called him on the streets. The pain in his chest was physical. Ruth touched Cole's shoulder. "Samuel left something for you. I've kept it all these years, waiting for the day you'd be ready." From her worn leather bag, she pulled out a yellowed envelope, edges worn by time. "It's a song. He wrote it for you when you were 5 years old, never recorded, never played in public. He called it Memphis Morning. The morning you were born. He said it was the most beautiful thing he ever composed." Cole took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, sheet music handwritten on old staff paper stained with time and old tears. The handwriting was shaky but careful, each note drawn with love. "He wanted you to play this on the day you remembered that music is love, not performance, on the day you stopped running from who you are." In that moment backstage, Marcus watched everything with an indecipherable expression. He pulled out his phone, made a call when it answered. He said simply, "Cancel everything, the contract is over," and hung up. He grabbed his briefcase and left the theater without looking back. Emma, not knowing what to do, approached Cole, touched his shoulder lightly. "Will you play with me your father's music?" Cole looked at her, eyes red and swollen, and something in that child's face, the same expression Samuel had, the same impossible kindness, broke him even more. "I don't deserve it," he whispered, "but yes, I'll play." Denise, still in the corridor trying to understand the chaos, finally reached Emma and hugged her tightly, wordless. Just silent tears. Lily and the Zhang family commented in Mandarin about family honor and path of redemption. Grandma Zhang, a practicing Buddhist, murmured a prayer. Journalists exploded with questions, but Ivy Chen formed a human blockade, protecting Emma from harassment, shouting, "She's a child, leave her alone." Mrs. Kowalski watched from home on TV while preparing pierogi, Tears falling into the dough, heavy silence post-revelation, dense as fog, smell of tears and smeared makeup, sound of muffled sobs echoing, coldness of wooden stage under Cole's knees, harsh light of dawn beginning to enter through theatre doors, rough texture of ancient sheet music paper, salty taste of tears, weight of Ruth's embrace. Collective suspended breathing, sensation of ending and beginning simultaneously. 1 week after the duel, the video had gone viral. 15 million views, thousands of comments divided between support and fierce criticism. Cole Harrison had become synonymous with redemption for some, emotional fraud for others. On a Saturday morning, Cole, Ruth, Eleanor, and Emma met in a small working-class neighborhood cafe, the same neighborhood where Thomas Brooks had lived. The place smelled of cheap brewed coffee, stale bread, and frying oil, peeling walls, scratched formica tables, mismatched chairs. It was the opposite of Cole's mansion, but there was something there the mansion never had. True life. Cole looked different, unshaven, eyes swollen from insomnia, simple clothes, jeans and t-shirt, something he hadn't worn in years. He ordered black coffee and couldn't drink it. "I want to play Memphis Morning with you," he said to Emma. Voice still hoarse, "But I don't know if I can. It's been 15 years since I played something my father wrote." Emma, sitting beside Eleanor, replied, "I don't know if I can either. I'm not good enough." Eleanor, sipping chamomile tea, intervened firmly. "Neither of you needs to be good enough. You need to be true. Samuel's music doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for honesty." They decided to rehearse in an abandoned church Thomas used to attend, the Hope Baptist Church. Closed for 3 years due to lack of funds, the roof had leaks, pews were dusty, but the acoustics were perfect. Cole got the key from the retired pastor, Reverend James, 78, who'd known Thomas. They rehearsed for 3 days. At first, Cole played mechanically. Years of pure technique didn't disappear, but Emma stopped him. "You're thinking, my dad said to feel first, think later." Cole, frustrated, tried again and again and again. On the 3rd day, something changed. He closed his eyes and, instead of thinking about his father Samuel, he thought about the last time he saw him. The hurt but loving look. The rough hand touching his face, the hoarse voice saying, "I love you, son." And when he played, truth finally came out. Emma cried hearing it. "Like that, that's it." Ruth, sitting in the first pew, and couldn't contain sobs meanwhile. Cole made radical decisions, put mansion up for sale, luxury cars in auction, announced indefinite pause in career. The music industry went into shock. Marcus, who'd abandoned him, gave interviews saying, "I always knew he was unstable." But the most important decision, Cole bought the land where Thomas Brooks died, an unfinished, abandoned construction in the working-class neighborhood. Surrounded by weeds and debris, he announced he'd build a cultural center there, Samuel Harrison Foundation, free music for vulnerable children. The press massacred him. Cole Harrison, from idol to failure in 2 weeks. Millionaire musician has nervous breakdown in public. Charity or guilt. Cole Harrison tries to buy redemption, but letters began arriving, not from critics or the elite, from ordinary people. A single mother from Tennessee wrote, "My son asked why you cried. I said it's because you finally woke up." An elderly man from Memphis, "I knew Samuel, he'd be proud." A teenager from the Bronx, "Thank you for reminding me that making mistakes isn't the end." Emma, meanwhile, began classes at Nashville School of Music, full scholarship as promised. But she faced brutal bullying. Classmates from wealthy families mocked the trumpet, imitated her poor neighborhood accent, excluded her from groups. A girl, Madison Crest, 10 years old, daughter of a music producer, led the bullying. "You're only here out of pity. You have no talent. You have a sad story." Emma came home crying. Denise, furious, wanted to pull her daughter from school, but Eleanor intervened. "The world will always try to diminish you. Emma, you can run, or you can prove them wrong, not with words, with music." Lily Zhang defended Emma at school. confronted Madison publicly in the cafeteria, saying in Mandarin, then translating, "You have everything, but you have no heart." They created a friendship pact with a ritual. They played together, trumpet and violin Lily was learning, and shared Chinese food. Denise was promoted at the supermarket. Her boss, Mrs. Clarkson, was moved by the story and offered sector management. Uivi Chen published an investigative series in 3 parts, Samuel Harrison, The Man Nashville Forgot. National repercussion, museums began searching for his records. Neighbors from Emma's neighborhood organized a raffle to help Cole with the foundation, raised $3,000 in coins and crumpled bills. Smell of cheap coffee and stale bread in the neighborhood cafe, sound of jackhammer at future foundation site mixed with street music. Soft candlelight in abandoned church during rehearsals, contrast between oppressive silence of sold mansion and living noise of working-class neighborhood, taste of simple but lovingly made food, texture of calluses forming on Cole's hands, helping with construction, warmth of sincere hugs replacing calculated handshakes, church dust sticking to clothes, echo of musical notes in empty, potentially full space. 3 months after the duel, construction of the Samuel Harrison Foundation was 60% complete. Structure erected, roof placed, windows installed. Cole worked physically on the construction every day, carried cement bags, painted walls, installed shelves, something he'd never done in his life. His muscles ached, hands gained calluses, skin bronzed under the sun. The workers, initially skeptical, came to respect him. "He's people," commented a bricklayer. Finally, Emma gave her first volunteer class before the foundation even officially opened. 5 neighborhood children gathered in the temporarily loaned abandoned church. She taught using her father's trumpet. The children were Jamal Baptiste, 7 years old, son of a Haitian immigrant whose father worked as a deliveryman. Sophia Morales, 8, Mexican, family of 5, sharing a 2-room apartment. Kevin O'Reilly, 9, Irish-American. Mother was a cleaner. Amara Johnson, 6, African-American. Lived with grandmother and Chen Wei, 8, Chinese. Parents owned a laundry. Jamal stood out immediately, played a simple melody on the second try. As if the instrument were a natural extension of him, Emma saw in the boy what Eleanor saw in her, raw talent mixed with soul. Eleanor officially became the Foundation's pedagogical director. She developed her own methodology. Teach technique without killing emotion. Volunteer teachers began appearing. Retirees, music college students, unemployed musicians wanting to contribute. Ruth organized a benefit bazaar in the parking lot next to the construction. The entire community participated. Mrs. Kowalski sold pierogi, the Zhang family offered sesame dumplings, African-American neighbors prepared soul food, Mexicans brought tamales. It was a spontaneous cultural festival. They raised $8,500. Cole learned to play differently, accepted that his notes weren't perfect, that pauses were true breaths, that mistakes were sometimes humanization. He and Emma played together for the first time in public post-duel. Performance in the neighborhood square on a Saturday afternoon. They played Memphis Morning. There was no luxurious stage, no professional lighting, just 2 musicians, a former millionaire and an 8-year-old girl, playing in front of 150 people sitting in plastic chairs. And it was perfect. When they finished, there wasn't immediate applause. There was emotional silence then, standing ovation, mothers cried, children hugged borrowed instruments. An elderly man shouted, "Samuel is smiling today." At night, at the construction site, Cole sat on an overturned paint can, looking at walls still unfinished. Ruth sat beside him. "Are you happy?" she asked. Cole thought for a long time. "I don't know what happiness is, but I know what peace is, and this is more than I deserved." Lily Zhang learned violin intensely and formed a musical duo with Emma. They performed in neighborhood cafes, earned modest tips they donated to the foundation. Denise and Ruth became close friends, exchanged recipes, stories, prayed together. Ruth taught Denise traditional African-American dishes. Denise taught Ruth Brazilian specialties she learned from her mother. Ivy Chen won Regional Investigative Journalism Award for the series about Samuel, donated prize money to foundation, and began documenting construction on blog. Former manager Marcus tried to return by email. Offering free professional administration, Cole replied, "Thank you, but I already have professionalism, that of honesty." Mrs. Kowalski donated her family's antique accordion, instrument her father played in concentration camp, to foundation collection. Small ceremony. Everyone crying. Cole seriously injured his hand, installing metal shelf, feared never playing professionally again. Eleanor visited him in hospital and said, "You don't need to play professionally anymore. You need to play truthfully." Emma felt growing jealousy of Jamal when she realized he progressed faster than her in some techniques. Eleanor taught, "His success doesn't diminish yours. There's room for everyone to shine." Denise almost refused Cole's financial help to buy Emma's school uniform, Pride. But Ruth intervened. "Accepting help isn't weakness." One of the children, Kevin, stole a donated instrument to sell and help his mother pay rent, was caught, but instead of punishment, foundation offered food scholarship for family. Persistent smell of fresh paint and wet cement, sound of hammers and music intertwining at construction site, suffocating heat of summer sun on physical work, taste of homemade lemonade sold at bazaar. Texture of new calluses on Cole's hands, rough but symbol of transformation, honest work sweat mixed with construction dust, human warmth of simple audience in square, melody of Memphis morning echoing between low buildings, children's laughter learning notes, weight of responsibility and hope in Emma's chest, inexplicable peace in Cole's eyes. Sleeping exhausted, 6 months after the initial duel, the Samuel Harrison Foundation officially opened its doors. Small but significant inauguration. 850 children enrolled, 18 volunteer teachers, 7 classrooms, still simple but functional, 85 donated instruments, library with 300 scores catalogued by Eleanor. Emma, now 9 years old, had matured emotionally impressively. She not only studied at Nashville School of Music, where she'd finally been genuinely accepted by classmates after an emotional recital, but taught 4 weekly classes at the foundation. She was a natural leader, patient with beginners, firm but caring. Cole received an unexpected invitation, international tour with European Philharmonic Orchestra, salary of $500,000. He read the email 3 times, then responded in one line, "My stage now is where children learn their first note, thank you." But no, national magazine American Culture did a cover story. The musician who traded fame for purpose. 8 pages, photos of Cole working at foundation, emotional interview where he said, "I had millions but was poor in soul. Now I have nothing and I'm rich." The article went viral. Donations exploded, $150,000 in 1 month. But not everything was celebration. A serious threat emerged. Nashville City Hall threatened to close the foundation for technical irregularities, delayed licenses, zoning issues, safety standards, but Ivy's investigation revealed truth. Lobbyist for rival businessman Ethan Carmichael, owner of expensive private music school that lost students to free foundation, was pressuring counselors. The community mobilized spontaneously. Ruth, now a candidate councilwoman, organized a march with 500 people. Foundation children played instruments in front of City Hall, 85 children playing Memphis Morning simultaneously. It was chaotic, out of tune, but immensely powerful. Emma, with maturity of someone who'd lived much in little time, led an improvised speech. "My father died building buildings for rich people to live in. Now there's a building where poor children learn. If you close this, you're saying we don't matter, that we don't deserve to dream." Her voice trembled but didn't break. National media covered it, the mayor. Pressured by public opinion, gave in, licenses were approved. Ethan Carmichael, embarrassed by exposure, made an anonymous donation of $25,000, discovered later by Ivy that night. After victory, Emma collapsed. The weight of being a symbol finally took its toll. She cried copiously in Denise's lap. "I just wish Dad was here. I just wish he could see. Denise, holding her daughter tight, whispered, "He sees every day he sees," Jamal revealed, having recently lost his mother to complications from untreated diabetes. Family without health insurance, Cole identified deeply, created almost paternal bond with the boy, offered financial help to father, who initially refused but later accepted. Lily and Emma composed their first song together, Two Languages, One Heart, fusion of trumpet and violin, melody mixing Brazilian, Chinese and American influences. Performed at school festival, won first place. Eleanor became gravely ill with pneumonia, was hospitalized. Foundation children serenaded under hospital window playing Memphis Morning. Nurses cried. Ruth won election for councilwoman with platform of culture and education for peripheries. Victory speech, this is for Samuel, for Thomas, for every child who deserves a chance. Ivy launched book, Angels in the Streets, the story of Samuel Harrison, complete biography with rare photos, interviews, social impact analysis. Regional bestseller, human warmth of crowd united in common purpose. Protest shouts mixed with out-of-tune but moving music from 85 children, smell of hot asphalt from street where march happened, collective sweat from 2-kilometer walk to City Hall. Overlapping sounds of different instruments, creating melodic chaos, cold, sterile hospital light, contrasting with warmth of flowers brought by children, palpable political tension in councillors' meeting, obstinate hope in mother's eyes present, taste of victory tempered with exhaustion, weight of responsibility on Emma's shoulders, texture of relief and exhaustion tears, 1 full year after the historic duel. The Samuel Harrison Foundation was now a national reference. Educators from 5 states visited to learn methodology, universities made partnerships, international media made mini-documentaries. Emma, about to turn 10, gave recitals in 3 different states, but always returned to teach at the foundation. She categorically refused to miss classes on Wednesdays and Saturdays. "The children count on me," she said, when her new, honest manager suggested a longer tour. Cole genuinely reconnected with old musician friends, not for status, but for shared love of music. He organized monthly benefit concerts, Samuel Harrison Nights, where famous and unknown musicians played side by side. Raising funds, they'd raised $320,000 in 6 concerts. Eleanor fully recovered from pneumonia. Stronger and more determined, she published a textbook, Teaching Music with Soul. Humanized methodology. Now used in 12 conservatories across the country, Ruth exercised an exemplary mandate as councilwoman, approved 3 cultural incentive laws, allocated public funds for similar foundations, became a national model of periphery-focused management. Denise realized an old dream, opened a small restaurant, Taste of Home, with collective loan from community. $15,000 raised by 87 neighbors, Brazilian and soul food. It became a cultural meeting point, space where musicians performed informally. Jamal, now 8 years old, composed his first original piece, Port-au-Prince to Nashville, tribute to deceased mother and city that embraced him. It was a piece for trumpet and percussion, fusion of Haitian rhythms with American blues. He performed at the foundation. Audience of 200 cried together, but a new threat emerged. Real estate developer Titanium Developments wanted to buy land around foundation to build luxury condominiums. Aggressive gentrification. 15 families received tempting offers, 3 times market value if they sold. Foundation would be isolated, children would have to travel hours, community would be destroyed. Cole and Emma organized a street music festival, Angels of Memphis Festival. 3 days, 200 volunteer artists, all musical styles, celebrating Samuel Harrison's legacy, goal, raise funds to help families not sell and show neighborhoods' cultural value. The festival was an explosion of life. Improvised stages on every corner, food trucks from 15 nationalities, free workshops, jam sessions until dawn. Over 5,000 people attended. They raised $180,000. The developer, seeing resistance, increased pressure, offered $500,000 directly to Cole to relocate foundation to less problematic area. Cole publicly refused at press conference. This community isn't problematic. It's resilient. We won't abandon those who never abandoned us. Lily went to National Youth Violin Competition in Chicago. Emma traveled with Zhang family to support. Her first plane trip, Lily didn't win, placed 5th, was devastated. Emma consoled her. You played with truth, that's winning. Mrs. Kowalski, now 83, began teaching basic Polish to foundation children through traditional songs. Language is culture, and culture shouldn't die. Marcus reappeared physically after a year. Grey hair, thin, repentant, asked Cole's forgiveness in front of everyone. I prioritize money over humanity. I want to work voluntarily if you'll allow. Cole hesitated. Ruth intervened. Everyone deserves a second chance. Marcus became volunteer administrator, used business expertise to legalize and expand foundation. Ivy documented everything for second book and launched weekly podcast. A Rebuilding Legacies. Emma found old letter from father written months before death. If I leave before seeing you grow up, don't let music die. Play for me, but mainly play for yourself. Love you infinite. Festival Street with overlapping smell of food from 20 nationalities. Sound of different music from each corner creating harmonic cacophony. Colorful flags hung between buildings like permanent rainbow. Dancers sweat on sidewalks, street dust raised by moving feet. Taste of cold lemonade on hot afternoon. Texture of collective hugs after shows. Golden late afternoon light over diverse crowd. Combative joy. Hope mixed with fear of losing what was gained. Weight of decision on families. Melody of Port-au-Prince to Nashville, echoing as anthem of resilience. The story reached its emotional apex and complete resolution. It was the day of official inauguration of the Samuel Harrison Foundation. Reformed and expanded. 18 months after the duel that changed everything, the land, once abandoned construction where Thomas died, was now a vibrant cultural complex. Theater with 200 seats. Professionally equipped recording studio donated by Nashville Studio. Music library with 1,200 catalogued scores. 7 permanent classrooms. Auditorium for presentations. Memorial garden with bronze plaques. Morning dawned golden. At 9, 300 enrolled children waiting list with 150 names began arriving with parents, grandparents, siblings. They were from 15 nationalities. Haitian, Mexican, Chinese, Polish, Nigerian, Brazilian, Vietnamese, Syrian, Guatemalan, Ethiopian, Filipino, Indian, Dominican, Jamaican, Somali. The entire neighborhood transformed into multicultural celebration. 40 volunteer teachers were present, from retirees to college students, professional musicians to passionate amateurs. Eleanor, now 71 and officially lifetime pedagogical director, supervised everything with an attentive but satisfied gaze. The ceremony began at 10. Ruth, as councilwoman, gave an emotional opening speech. 18 months ago, my nephew Cole was a lost man. My brother Samuel had died forgotten. Thomas Brooks had died in an accident, but from pain, purpose was born. And today, 300 children have a chance none of them would have had before. Cole, wearing jeans and simple shirt, no designer suit, went on stage. He carried not the gold-plated trumpet that had been sold months ago, but a simple trumpet, aged bronze, bought at a thrift store. I don't need gold to play truth, he explained. I learned that from an 8-year-old girl and a dented trumpet. Emma, now almost 10, went on stage beside him. She still used her father's trumpet, rusted, dented, but gleaming with history and love. Together, they led a historic performance, Cole and Emma as soloists. But accompanied by 50 foundation children, each with their instrument, they played Memphis Morning, the composition Samuel created the day Cole was born. The performance was chaotic. Some children missed notes. Others lost time. Kevin played flute off key. Sophia stumbled on the entrance. But when they reached the chorus, something magical happened. All 52 instrumental voices merged. It wasn't technical perfection. It was collective truth. It was community transformed into music. The audience of 500 people fell into absolute silence during the 7-minute piece, when the last note echoed and silenced. There were 3 seconds of pause, that kind of pause that only happens when something sacred has been witnessed. Then standing ovation, explosion of applause, shouts, whistles, tears. Mothers hugged children, grandfathers discreetly wiped eyes. Eleanor cried openly. Ruth sobbed. Denise, in the middle of the audience, put hands on heart and whispered, "Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for never giving up on dreams." After applause, Emma approached the microphone with firm voice, no longer the trembling little voice from months ago. She said, "My father said broken things make the most beautiful music because truth lives in them." He was right. All of us here are a little broken, by losses, by difficulties, by things life took from us. But today, together, we make the most beautiful music in the world. Cole, emotional, added, "My father taught me to play, but I forgot why," Emma reminded me. "We don't play to be admired, we play to be human. We play to connect broken with broken and discover that together we're whole." Memorial was inaugurated next. Garden with native plants, recycled wood benches, water fountain, symbol of renewal, 2 bronze plaques affixed to main wall. Samuel Harrison, 1948 to 2010. Memphis's trumpet angel, who taught that music doesn't choose rich or poor, it chooses those with courage to listen to their heart. Thomas Brooks, 1975-2024, who lived and taught that love transformed into music never dies. Cole touched the engraved letters, fingers trembling, whispered, "I should have come back, Dad. I'm sorry, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Emma appeared beside him, holding the dented trumpet. "He knows," she said with wise child simplicity. "They both know. I feel it." Cole smiled, a real smile. Transformed, free of arrogance and fear. "How do you know?" "Because when we play, I feel it. It's not just us. There's someone else breathing with us. There always is." In that instant, wind blew gently, carrying the first hesitant notes of Amara, 6 years old, rehearsing inside the building, out of tune. Stumbling but full of pure hope, Cole and Emma looked at each other without planning. They raised their trumpets. Together, they played a single long, sustained note that crossed the garden, rose through open classroom windows, echoed in corridors, reached the ears of every child who now had a chance. A note that said, "You're not alone. Music will find you. And when it does, you'll discover you were always stronger than you imagined." 3 years later, Emma, 13, gave international recitals but always returned. She taught 8 weekly classes. Lily and she recorded independent album Sound Bridges. Cole never did commercial shows again, but played weekly at Foundation. Foundation replicated model in 5 cities. Jamal won scholarship to European Conservatory but chose to stay and teach. Marcus became paid administrator, modest salary. Donated 30% for scholarships. Developer gave up. Land became municipal cultural park. Ivy and Eleanor launched together Pedagogy of Truth, teaching music with soul. Mrs. Kowalski died peacefully at 84. Children played Farewell Mazurka at traditional Polish funeral 3 years after inauguration. Cole, alone in Memorial Garden at dusk, golden light bathed bronze plaques. He touched Samuel and Thomas with reverence. Wind blew, making leaves dance from building, sound of children rehearsing. Laughter, wrong notes, attempts, joy. Cole whispered, "I'm playing again, Dad. But now I know who for." Wind responded, or seemed to respond, carrying invisible melody that only broken and healed hearts can hear. It was Memphis Morning, played by voices no longer here, but never really left. Cole smiled, closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and for the first time in decades, felt complete. Which moment in this story touched your heart most deeply? Share in the comments your story of broken things becoming beautiful matters too. Save this story to revisit when you need reminding that it's never too late to find your truth. My father said, broken things make the most beautiful music because truth lives in them.